Hello everyone, and we are back after our midterm during week 7. We are on week 8 now, and we are going to work on chapter 5 in the textbook. And so up on Cobra, I've got week 8 and week 9 where you'll be working on chapter 5. So in week 8, you will have 3 assignment folders to complete. The first one is you need to read the chapter pages. Those will be page 245 to 254. You're going to watch, obviously, this video, take notes on the PowerPoint that we go over, and then I'm going to go over the Chapter 5 checkpoint and test your understanding part 1 so that we get a little extra practice with Chapter 5 because, as I've mentioned before, Chapter 5 is the hardest chapter because you have to actually create the main idea sentence yourself. So that's assignment 1. Assignment 2, you need to complete the chapter 5 review cards on pages 259 to 260 and then complete chapter 5 review guide. I will say for those who need the textbook pages and you didn't buy the book, I was notified that the library's copy was missing pages from chapter 5 and chapter 7. So for those two chapters, chapter 5, I have up here on Cobra a small folder with the textbook pages for you if you need them. And I'll do that again when we get to chapter 7. So let's get started with the PowerPoint. In chapter 5, we're formulating an implied main idea. All right, that means that it's not an actual sentence that you're going to pull out of that paragraph. You're not going to just pick a sentence out of the paragraph like you did in chapter 4. So, when authors do not state the main idea directly in a sentence all by itself, it is your job to infer it and write a sentence to express it. And when I say infer, it means to form an opinion from the evidence given in the paragraph. And you're going to develop a conclusion based on known facts from that paragraph. So this chapter, you might hear the word implied or formulated, and they mean the same thing. You're basically creating that main idea from the sentences provided in the paragraph. So remember, the main idea sentence you formulate or create must always be based on what is presented in the paragraph. Even if you know a little bit of prior knowledge about that topic, you only want to use what's given in that paragraph. So why is it important that we create this implied main idea? We got 3 reasons. You limit your comprehension and understanding unless you can formulate main ideas that are implied, okay? So sometimes you're not fully grasping the ideas until you can actually create that main idea yourself. And then when you formulate main ideas, it helps you to remember the material much better. And then your college instructors assume that you still read carefully enough to understand what stated and implied main ideas are. Okay? So when you're having class discussions, having to talk about it with your instructors, dealing with your homework, they're going to still expect you to understand the difference between the two and be able to apply those. All right, so when creating the implied main idea, what do you need to do? So first step, obviously, always read the paragraph, and then 2, pick the topic. Now remember, that's chapter 3. Chapter 3 gave you 4 tips on how to find the topic of a paragraph. So remember, clue number 1, look at your headings, your titles, if there's a heading or title. Clue number 2, look for special print. Those are 2 easy clues that'll stick out real well, okay? So if you have those, then you read that paragraph to determine if that indeed is the topic of the paragraph. However, if you don't have any titles or any special print, you got to go to clue 3, which is you have to see if there's any words that get repeated over and over again. Anything you can circle or underline multiple times. Or if you don't have that, maybe you have something that gets replaced by pronouns, gets replaced by other words like he, she, it, they. Okay? So remember how to pick out your topic. And then 3, if you can't find a stated main idea, if you can't find one sentence that is your stated main idea, you need to ask yourself the comprehension monitoring question. What is the most important point the author wants me to infer about the topic in this paragraph? And then there's 3 formulas you're going to use to help create the implied main idea sentence. This first formula is actually kind of the simplest one, and we kind of talked about this in chapter 4 a little bit when we talked about making sure that our stated main idea has all of the important points to it. So remember, your main idea has your topic plus the author's most important point about that topic. So with Formula 1, you're going to add an essential word or phrase to a sentence in the paragraph that almost states the main idea. So you're going to use when the author expresses most of the main idea in one sentence, but it still needs a little bit more information. A lot of times it's lacking a topic, which hence is a word or a phrase, remember? Okay, so in our book we have an exercise on page 247 that I want to go over, and I have it up here. Let's see. There, oops. There we go. Alright, so in exercise 1, we have a paragraph here. Alright, we're going to pick the topic and then we're going to formulate our main idea using formula number 1. Okay, so remember, before we even look at this, is there a heading? Is there special print? Nope. So when we read this, we're going to have to look at what gets repeated over and over again or what gets replaced with other pronouns. And the paragraph reads, "What is meditation? It is a learned technique for refocusing attention that brings about an altered state of consciousness. Meditation typically consists of the repetition of a mantra, a sound, word, or symbol, over and over. In other forms of meditation, the focus is on a picture, flame, or specific part of the body. The procedure involves concentrating on something so thoroughly that the person who is meditating becomes unaware of any outside stimulation. He or she reaches a different state of consciousness." Alright, so here we have a paragraph that helps explain something. And what is it helping to teach us about? Meditation. As you can see, they constantly use the word meditation over and over again. Okay, so that is going to be our topic, meditation. Okay, so the question is, what is it that our author wants us to know about meditation? So here we're going to look for a sentence that in one sentence explains the definition of what meditation is. And we have that sentence, and it's right here. The second sentence here after the question. It says, "It is a learned technique for refocusing attention that brings about an altered state of consciousness." Now, there's one thing missing from this. Do we know what learned technique we're talking about here? No, because they use the pronoun it. Okay? So we need to replace it with our topic. So if we say, and we formulate down here, meditation is a learned technique for refocusing attention that brings about an altered state of consciousness. Okay, so that would be a good formulated main idea sentence. Okay, we fixed the problem that was in this sentence. It had our main idea, the most important point about it, but we needed our topic. Okay, also remember back in chapter 4, I had given in the PowerPoint an example. He is known as the best athlete of the 20th century. Okay, so remember we had this example as well. Well, ask yourself, do we know who he is? No, we don't. But we could put in who he is. Let's say Michael Jordan is known as the best athlete of the 20th century. And so that would be a good formulated main idea sentence, because we have our topic plus the most important point about our topic. So Formula 1 is basically looking in that paragraph, determining the topic, and if there's one sentence that gives the most important point about it, but it has a pronoun, he, she, it, they, for the topic, then you're just going to replace that pronoun with your topic. Alright, let's go back to our PowerPoint. So that's formula number 1. You've got your sentence that almost states the main idea. You're going to add in, usually it's going to be the topic, the word or phrase that's the topic, and that'll be your implied main idea. Formula number 2. Here you have the main point maybe in 2 sentences or just not 1 sentence. So your job then is to combine the sentences from the paragraph into 1 sentence. That'll be a good implied main idea sentence. And there's certain words that we can use to join the 2 sentences together. So we've got conjunction words like and, but, however, or whatever relationship you want to show between the 2 sentences. And the 2 sentences may follow each other in the paragraph, or they may be separated. Remember that there are more than one correct way to combine sentences to express an implied main idea. But what is important is that the main idea is correct and it's complete. So on page 249, we have another exercise that we want to take a quick look at. I have it up here. Alright, so in this paragraph it says, how would you feel if someone obtained a driver's license and credit cards in your name? What if that person then assumed your identity to buy clothes, cars, and a house? Identity theft is the illegal assumption of someone's identity for the purposes of economic gain. Every year, nearly 10 million people are victimized in this way. So our topic, remember those 4 clues of figuring out our topic. Clue number 2 said special print, and here we have special print, identity theft, and that is what we're talking about in this paragraph. So that is our topic. Okay, so now we want to formulate our main idea. So here we had the first 2 sentences are actually questions. So remember, your main idea is never going to be a question. So we need to look at these last 2 sentences. And so it says, identity theft is the illegal assumption of someone's identity for the purposes of economic gain. Every year, nearly 10 million people are victimized in this way. So in this sense, we can actually combine these 2 sentences to create the full main idea of what the author's talking about. So identity theft is the illegal assumption of someone's identity for the purposes of economic gain. Then we're going to put a comma and our conjunction word, and every year nearly 10 million people are victimized in this way. Okay, so that's one way to combine both of those sentences into one, by including our conjunction word right there. So you're taking out the period, you'll put in a comma, and then our conjunction word, and then lowercase the e on every. Alright, so that shows, here's our topic, identity theft, and then the rest of it is the main idea of what we're talking about with it. Okay, so we've got our 2 points that our main idea needs, and it's all in one sentence that we can understand by itself. Alright, we're going to stop the video here, and then in video number 2, I'm going to finish up by talking about formula number 3, and then things to always keep in mind.